This dress is stunning. I feel so confident.
Eliana had worn the red dress because Sam told her not to. Not in those words. He never said things directly anymore. He had just looked at her when she held it up in the bedroom mirror. A slow, deliberate look that started at her shoulders and ended at the floor, and then he had turned back to his phone without a single word. That silence was a language she had spent 4 years learning to read. It meant too much. It meant you will embarrass me. It meant remember who you are standing next to. She wore it anyway. She told herself it was confidence. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror with her edges laid and her gold earrings catching the light, she almost believed it. The dress was the color of a warning, floor length, fitted through the waist, with a modest neckline that still managed to make her look like she belonged somewhere important. Her dark skin glowed against the fabric. She looked like a woman who deserved to walk into a room and own it. She looked like someone Sam had stopped seeing a long time ago. The gala was held at Fort Langley's Officer Club, a building that tried very hard to look elegant and mostly succeeded. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, men in pressed dress uniforms with medals catching the light like small, proud suns. The women who came with them wore black and navy and the occasional tasteful champagne. Safe colors. Obedient colors. Eliana's red was a fire in a room full of smoke. She felt the stares the moment they walked in. Some curious, some appreciative, one or two nakedly hostile. She kept her chin level and her hand light on Sam's arm. He hadn't looked at her once since they left the car. "Colonel Hargrove," Sam said, his whole body changing the moment he spotted his commanding officer across the room. His spine straightened. His voice warmed. He became the version of himself that he showed the world, capable, charming, decorated. He steered them toward the group without a word to her, his hand dropping from her arm entirely. She followed. That was what she did. She followed. Colonel Hargrove was a broad man with a silver crew cut and the kind of handshake that was meant to establish something. His wife, Janet, stood beside him in a navy sheath dress, pearls at her throat, the complete picture of a military spouse who had mastered invisibility as an art form. "Sam, good to see you. And this must be—" Hargrove looked at Eliana, and something shifted in his expression. Not rudeness, not exactly. Just the faint recalibration of a man adjusting his expectations. "Eliana," she said, extending her hand before Sam could say anything. "His wife. Right. Hargrove shook it briefly. Bold color choice for the evening. The way he said it was not a compliment. She smiled anyway. 4 years of practice. The dinner table seated 12. She was placed between Sam and a lieutenant colonel's wife named Donna, who spent the first course talking about her son's soccer tournament and the second course talking about her other son's soccer tournament. Eliana listened, asked the right questions, laughed at the right moments. She was good at this. She had trained herself to be. Sam was 3 seats from her in spirit and 1,000 miles away in every way that mattered. She watched him across the table, laughing at something Hargrove said, his hand gesturing with the easy confidence of a man in his natural habitat. He was magnetic when he wanted to be. That was the thing about Sam that had undone her in the beginning, the way he could make a room feel like it revolved around him. She had thought, foolishly, that being loved by a man like that would make her shine by association. Instead, she had learned to disappear. "Your dress is really something," Donna said beside her, in the same tone Hargrove had used. "Thank you," Eliana said. It's very red." "It is," she agreed pleasantly, and took a sip of water. The evening wore on. The speeches began. Plaques were given out. There was applause, and more applause, and she clapped her hands together until her palms were warm. At some point during the third speech, Sam leaned over and spoke into her ear. She had thought, for a fraction of a second, that it was going to be something kind. A small thing, just a word, the way he used to in the early days when he would lean over at dinner parties and whisper something that made her press her lips together to keep from laughing. "You're sitting wrong," he said. She turned to look at him. "Your posture," he said, his voice low and very even. "You're slouching. It looks sloppy." She straightened her back. She didn't say anything. "And stop touching your earring. You do it when you're nervous and it draws attention. She lowered her hand from her ear. She had not even realized she was doing it. He turned back to the speech. Something in her chest folded quietly, like a piece of paper being pressed flat. She had learned to manage these moments, to breathe through them, to store them somewhere small and locked inside herself and keep her face smooth and her posture correct and her expression pleasant. She was very good at managing them. She was just so tired of managing them. It was during the cocktail hour after dinner that everything changed. She had excused herself from a conversation she hadn't really been part of and drifted to the far side of the room where the crowd thinned and the noise dropped to something bearable. There was a floor-to-ceiling window there, and through it the city lights spread out below like scattered coins. She stood with a glass of sparkling water and let herself breathe for the first time all evening. She did not notice the man until he spoke. The red was the right choice. The voice came from beside her, unhurried and low, carrying the faint architecture of a Korean accent smoothed by years of expensive education. She turned. He was not in uniform. In a room full of decorated military men, that alone made him remarkable. He wore a dark charcoal suit that fit him the way suits fit men who don't buy off racks. Custom, considered, precise. He was tall, with the kind of stillness that didn't come from shyness but from absolute self-possession. His face was angular and calm, dark eyes holding a quality she could not immediately name. Not warmth exactly, something more complex than warmth. Recognition, perhaps, like he was looking at her and actually seeing what was there. She realized she was staring. "I'm sorry," she said. "The dress," he said, his gaze moving briefly to the room behind her, where navy and black dominated every sight line. In a room like this, wearing that color takes a particular kind of courage. He looked back at her. Or a particular kind of conviction. Either way, it was the right choice. She didn't know what to do with that. Compliments had become such foreign things that she had forgotten how to receive them without looking for the hidden edge underneath. "Thank you," she said carefully. He offered his hand. "Kong Jae-ho. Eliana." She shook it. His grip was firm without being performative. "Are you here with someone?" "I was invited," he said, which was not quite an answer and seemed deliberate. "Business interests. This base has recently partnered with a logistics company I have a stake in." He said it simply, without the posturing she had grown used to from men who wanted to establish their importance. He stated a fact the same way he might state the weather. "That sounds interesting," she said. "It isn't, particularly." The corner of his mouth moved. "But it brought me here, and here is turning out to be more interesting than I expected." She looked at him for a moment, caught off guard by the directness of it. Not aggressive, just honest. She was about to respond when she heard Sam's voice behind her. "Eliana." She turned. Sam was walking toward them with a glass of bourbon in his hand and the particular set to his jaw that she had learned meant he was calculating something. His eyes moved from her to Jae-ho and then back, and she watched the calculation complete itself. "Who's this?" he asked. Not to Jae-ho, to her. As if Jae-ho were a problem she had created. "Kong Jae-ho," Jae-ho said before she could answer. His voice had not changed at all. Same register, same unhurried calm. He extended his hand. "And you are?" Sam looked at the hand for a half-second longer than was polite before shaking it. "Captain Samuel Briggs. This is my wife." The way he said it. Not her name. Not Eliana. My wife. Like a label on a shelf. "I know," Jae-ho said. She introduced herself. The air between them thinned slightly. Sam's smile stayed in place, but something behind his eyes went cold and flat. "I hope she hasn't been monopolizing your time," Sam said, looking at her now with that particular brand of pleasantness that she knew covered something else entirely. "She tends to corner people." The words landed softly. That was the thing about Sam's particular cruelty. It never shouted. It never made a scene. It arrived in the shape of a joke, a gentle observation, a small, laughing truth wrapped around a blade so fine you didn't feel the cut until later when you looked down and saw the blood. She felt it now, the familiar tightening in her throat. She opened her mouth, though she had no idea what she was going to say. But Kong Jae-ho spoke first. "Actually, he said, and his voice carried a quiet authority that made Sam still. She was listening to me talk. I was the one doing the cornering. He turned to look at her, and his eyes were direct and completely unbothered. I apologize for that. You don't need to, she said, her voice coming out steadier than she expected. No, he agreed. But I wanted to. Beautiful besties, if this is already pulling you in, you haven't seen anything yet. Subscribe to this channel and stay with Eliana, because what Kang Jae-ho does next is going to completely shift the ground beneath her feet. Sam laughed. It was a short, tight sound. Right? Well, Eliana, Colonel Hargrove's wife was asking after you. You should go say hello. It was a dismissal dressed as a suggestion. She recognized the shape of it perfectly. The old Eliana would have gone. The Eliana who had spent 4 years smoothing herself down to fit into the space Sam allowed her would have smiled and excused herself and walked back across the room and spent the next 40 minutes discussing someone else's children's soccer games. She did not move. She didn't decide not to move. Her feet simply stayed where they were, as if her body had made a choice before her mind caught up to it. She stood there with her sparkling water and her red dress and her gold earrings, and she said, "In a minute." Sam looked at her. She looked back. Something passed between them in that silence, a reckoning that had been 4 years in the building. She could see him recalibrating, the way his jaw adjusted, the way his eyes went carefully blank. He was not used to "in a minute." He was used to immediate, quiet compliance. "Excuse us a moment," Sam said to Jae-ho, the charm returning to his voice with practiced ease. He touched Eliana's elbow, not hard, just firmly, the grip that meant we are going to speak privately right now. She let herself be steered a few feet away, close enough to the window that they were technically apart from the crowd. Sam kept his back to Jae-ho and his voice low and very controlled. "What are you doing?" he said. "Standing here," she said. "Don't be cute with me. I don't know who that man is, and you're over here chatting like you came alone." "He introduced himself," she said. "It was polite conversation." "Eliana." His voice dropped further, the kind of low that should have made her shrink. "This is my world. These are my colleagues. Every single thing you do here reflects on me. Every single thing. Do you understand that?" "I do," she said, and the steadiness in her own voice surprised her. "I've understood that for 4 years." He studied her face. She watched him try to locate the version of her he knew, the one who would look away right about now, who would soften, apologize, redirect. She was not looking away. "Fix your attitude," he said quietly, and walked back toward Hargrove's group. She stood very still for a moment. The city lights through the window blurred slightly, and she blinked once, hard, refusing the heat that was gathering at the backs of her eyes. She would not cry at a military gala. She would not give this room that. She turned back to the window. Jae-ho was still there. She had half expected him to have politely drifted away during that exchange. Instead, he stood exactly where he had been, looking out at the city lights with the patient ease of a man who had nowhere more important to be. He did not pretend he hadn't seen what just happened. He also did not make her feel observed or pitied. He simply existed there, beside her, a quiet and solid presence. "You don't have to stay," she said. "I know," he said. She looked at him. That wasn't a very comfortable thing to witness. "No," he agreed. "It wasn't." He paused. "Are you all right?" The question was so simple. Not performed, not loaded with agenda. Just a direct, human question asked by a person who appeared to actually want to know the answer. She opened her mouth to say, "Yes, of course, I'm fine. I'm always fine." "No," she said instead. "Not particularly." He nodded once, unhurried, accepting that the way he seemed to accept most things, without drama and without judgment. He looked back out at the city for a moment, giving her space inside the honesty she had just offered. "My father used to say," he began, his voice quiet, "that a person's character is visible in how they treat someone they believe has no power over them." He let that sit. "I have been watching this room for the last 2 hours. You are the only person in it who has treated every single person they have spoken to, waiter, spouse, officer, the same way, with actual attention." She stared at him. That is not a small thing, he said. She did not have words for what moved through her in that moment. It was not a dramatic feeling. It was quieter than that. It was the feeling of being seen so accurately by a stranger that it almost felt like an invasion, except it didn't feel like an invasion at all. Felt like relief. "You've been watching me?" she said. "Since you walked in," he said simply. The red dress made it difficult not to. And then you opened your mouth to speak to the waiter and you used his name. You had looked at his name tag, and I found myself paying attention. She remembered that. The young waiter with the slightly crooked bow tie. She had said, "Thank you, Derek," when he handed her the water, and he had looked so startled by it that her heart had ached a little. "Most people don't notice name tags," she said. "Most people don't," Jae-ho agreed. She realized she had stopped thinking about Sam. She realized, with a small shock, that she had completely forgotten to monitor her posture. And then the microphone at the front of the room clicked on, and Colonel Hargrove's voice filled the space, and everything that had been quietly building between her and Kang Jae-ho went still, waiting. "Before we close out the evening," Hargrove said, his voice carrying the easy boom of a man accustomed to addressing rooms, "I'd like to take a moment to recognize some outstanding members of our community. First, Captain Samuel Briggs, for his leadership on the Meridian deployment." Applause filled the room. Sam stepped forward, accepting a plaque, his smile wide and genuine and brilliant. He looked, in that moment, like everything she had once believed he was. She clapped with everyone else, her hands moving automatically. "And of course," Hargrove continued, "we're grateful to the families who support these men, the backbone, as it were." He chuckled. Several people chuckled with him. "Sam, you want to bring your wife up?" The room turned. Heads swiveled. Eyes found her. Sam turned too. His smile did not waver. It never wavered in public. He extended his hand in her direction, a gracious, public gesture. "Come here. Stand beside me. Play the part." She started to move. Instinct, for years of it, carrying her forward. And then Sam said, in the way that he did, light and easy and publicly audible, "Come on, sweetheart. Try not to blind them with the dress." Laughter. Actual laughter. From actual people. Rippling through the room. She stopped walking. The laughter was not mean-spirited. Not most of it. It was the reflexive laughter of a crowd that follows the cue of the charming man at the microphone. They weren't laughing at her specifically, but the result was the same. 30 or 40 people were laughing at a joke about her, told by her husband, in a room where she had spent 4 hours being invisible, and she was standing in the middle of it in a red dress that had been a quiet act of courage, and the courage had just been turned into a punchline. Her feet stopped. Her face went very still. She was not going to cry. She was not going to make a scene. She was going to stand here and breathe, and then she was going to make a decision about what happened next. She felt rather than saw Jae-ho move. He stepped forward from where he had been standing beside her, smoothly, unhurriedly, as though he had simply decided to cross the room and it happened to be in the direction of the microphone. He moved the way he did everything, with a precision that drew the eye without demanding it. He stopped beside her, not in front of her, not protective in a way that diminished her. Beside her. He did not look at Sam. He looked at her, in front of the entire room, with 30 pairs of eyes having found them both. Kang Jae-ho looked at Eliana the way someone looks at a painting they have been waiting their whole life to stand in front of. And then he said clearly, in a voice that carried without effort, "I think the dress is extraordinary." The room went very quiet. Asterisk, you need to stay right here, because what Jae-ho does in the next 60 seconds is going to be talked about in the comments for weeks. Don't go anywhere. Asterisk. He said it like a fact. Not a compliment designed to rescue her. Not a performative thing done for the room's benefit. He said it the way he had said everything else to her that evening, directly, honestly, without decoration. The silence that followed had a texture to it. She could feel the room recalibrating, that collective human adjustment when the expected script has been departed from and no one is sure what comes next. Sam's smile had not moved, but his eyes had. They had gone to Jae-ho with a sharpness that she recognized, the look he got when something had moved outside his control. Hargrove cleared his throat mildly at the microphone. Jae-ho did not look away from her. "The dress?" he said, still at that same unhurried volume. "And everything in it." Her heart was doing something she did not have a clinical term for. It was not the dizzy thing she remembered from being 22 and newly in love. It was deeper and slower than that, a kind of quiet earthquake, the feeling of ground shifting beneath feet that had been planted in the wrong place for a very long time. "Thank you," she said, and her voice did not shake. He offered her his arm then, just as simply as he had offered his hand earlier. An old-fashioned gesture, unhurried and deliberate. Not a rescue, an offering. She looked at it. She looked at Sam across the room, his smile still in place, his eyes hard and waiting. She looked back at the arm Jae-ho was offering. She took it. A ripple moved through the watching crowd. She felt it, the shift in the room's attention, the whispered adjustments. She walked with Jae-ho toward the edge of the room, away from the microphone, away from the spotlight, and she kept her chin level and her spine straight and her hands steady on his arm. They reached the window again. The city below was unchanged, indifferent, magnificent. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," he said, and she was beginning to understand that this was simply how he operated. He did what he chose to do, and he did not require the situation to demand it first. "Sam is going to be furious," she said. "Yes," Jae-ho said. "I expect he will be." She searched his face for discomfort or regret or the faint backing away that most people did when they realized they had wandered into someone else's complicated life. She found none of it. "Why?" she asked. "You don't know me. You have nothing to gain from this." He was quiet for a moment. Not the silence of someone searching for the right words. The silence of someone choosing how honest to be. "I know what it looks like," he said finally. "When someone has been made small for a long time and has forgotten that they weren't always that small." He looked at her. "I find I have a strong objection to it." Something broke open in her chest. Not painfully, the way a window breaks open on the first real day of spring. She looked out at the city for a moment, gathering herself. "I haven't forgotten," she said quietly. "I just stopped fighting it." "I know," he said. "You were fighting it tonight, though. Before I said anything." He paused. "The in a minute. That was yours." She turned to look at him sharply. He met her eyes without flinching. "That took more courage than the dress." She didn't answer right away. She was trying to remember the last time someone had paid close enough attention to her to notice a thing that small. She was trying to remember the last time someone had called something she did courageous instead of difficult. She was coming up empty. "I've been married to him for 4 years, she said. She wasn't sure why she was saying it. Maybe because the evening had cracked something open and she didn't know how to close it again. "I used to think I was the right person for him. I used to think if I was patient enough, supportive enough, present enough." She stopped. "That he would see you," Jae-ho said. "Yes," she whispered. "And does he?" She looked across the room to where Sam was accepting congratulations, his hand on Hargrove's shoulder, his laugh full and easy and completely real. He was happy. He was in his element. He had not looked in her direction once. "No," she said. The word cost her something. Saying it out loud to a stranger, in a room full of her husband's colleagues, was an admission she had been building walls around for years. The walls came down in that single syllable, and she felt the cold air of the truth on skin that had been covered for too long. Jae-ho said nothing for a moment. He did not rush to fill the silence with comfort or advice or the clumsy kindness of a person trying to fix something. He just let the truth be true. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced a small, flat card. No logo, just a number and his name. He held it out to her. "If you ever decide you're done being invisible," he said, "I would like you to call me." She looked at the card. She looked at him. "That's a complicated offer," she said. "It is," he agreed. "I'm not pretending it isn't." She took the card. If you think Eliana pocketing that card is where this story peaks, you have seriously underestimated what is coming. Subscribe and stay with me. Kang Jae-ho doesn't make offers he isn't prepared to follow through on. And Sam? Sam is about to make the worst mistake of his life. She kept the card in her palm for the rest of the evening, a small, flat secret pressed against her skin. Sam found her 20 minutes later. His smile was still operating, but his eyes were doing something else entirely. He took her arm, not cruelly, just with a grip that was slightly too firm, and guided her toward the exit with the smooth efficiency of a man who had decided the evening was over. In the car, he was quiet for 3 full minutes. She counted. "Who was that?" he asked. "I told you, Kang Jae-ho. He's a business investor. I know what he said he was." Sam's hands were on the wheel, very controlled. "I'm asking what that was." "A conversation," she said. "Eliana." His voice had the particular quiet that meant she was being warned. "He paid me a compliment," she said. "In front of people. That's all." "In front of my colleagues," Sam said. "In front of my commanding officer. He made me look." "What?" she said. "What did he make you look like, Sam?" The silence that filled the car after that question was different from the silences she was used to. This one was alive with something she had never let into the air between them before, the direct, unflinching shape of a question he did not want to answer. He didn't answer it. She turned back to the window and watched the city slide past in the dark, and she thought about a small flat card and a man who had looked at her like she was worth looking at. 3 days passed. She kept the card in the inside zipper pocket of her everyday handbag, the one she reached into 100 times a day. She was aware of it constantly, a small, significant weight. She did not think about calling. She thought about what it meant that she was thinking about calling. She ran the numbers on herself the way she had always been good at doing and found the math uncomfortable. She loved Sam, or she had loved him. She was no longer certain whether what remained was love or the familiar weight of a shared life. The way you keep wearing a coat long after it stops fitting because you've forgotten what it felt like to not wear it. She was thinking about this on the 4th morning, sitting in the kitchen with coffee going cold in her hand, when her phone lit up. A known number. She answered on instinct. "Hello. Good morning." The voice was immediately exactly who it was. She set her coffee mug down. "Mr. Kang Jae-ho," he said. "I apologize for calling without warning. I found your number through the Gala's guest registry." A brief pause. "I should have asked you for it directly. That was presumptuous of me." She was aware that she was smiling. She pressed her lips together. "It was," she agreed. "I wanted to ask," he said, "if you'd be willing to have coffee. Not dinner. Not anything complicated. Coffee in the morning in a public place, with no agenda except that I found our conversation at the Gala interesting and I would like to continue it." She looked at the empty kitchen. Sam had left at 5:30 for PT. He would not be back until evening. The apartment was enormous and quiet around her, the way it always was in the mornings, full of the specific silence of a life that had too much space in it. "You found our conversation interesting," she repeated. "I found you interesting," he said directly. The conversation was a consequence of that. She closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the card. She thought about in a minute and how it had felt to say it. She thought about what Jae-ho had said, about knowing when someone had been made small and had forgotten they weren't always that small. "Okay," she said. The coffee shop he chose was 40 minutes across the city. Not in Sam's neighborhood. Not near the base. It was in a quiet street of independent shops, warm-lit and unhurried. He was already there when she arrived, seated at a table by the window, and he stood when she walked in. She noticed that. The standing. Sam had not stood when she walked into a room in 3 years. She sat down across from him and they talked for 2 hours. Not about the Gala, not about Sam, not about anything that felt like the opening conversation of something that should not be happening. They talked about her degree in architecture, a career she had paused when she married a man whose postings moved her every 18 months. They talked about the city she had grown up in, Chicago, the specific smell of Lake Michigan in summer. They talked about his work, not the Mafia architecture that she would learn the shape of much later, but the legitimate logistics empire that sat on top of it, the infrastructure of movement, of getting things from one place to another in a world that never stopped needing things moved. He asked questions the way people do when they actually want to know the answers, listening completely, not waiting for his own turn to speak. She had forgotten what that felt like. On the way home, sitting in a rideshare with the city moving past the windows, she made herself be honest with herself. She was in trouble. Not because anything had happened. Nothing had happened. It was coffee and conversation in a public place, and his hands had never crossed the table. But she was in trouble because for 2 hours she had felt like herself. The self that existed before she became a supporting role in someone else's story. The self that had opinions and took up space and once wore a red dress not as an act of defiance but just because she liked the color. She was in trouble because she didn't want that feeling to end. She got home 20 minutes before Sam. She was in the kitchen making dinner when he came through the door, and she heard him drop his keys in the bowl by the entrance the way he always did, and she heard his footsteps, and she stood at the counter and she felt, for the first time in a long time, the specific, clarifying sensation of knowing exactly what was wrong with her life. Knowing was its own kind of beginning. Besties, this is only the beginning of what Kang Jae-ho is going to do. The next time he sees Eliana won't be over coffee. And Sam is going to be standing right there. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now because what comes next will make the gala look like a quiet evening. It was 11 days after the coffee shop when Sam found the card. She had moved it from her handbag to a book on her nightstand, tucked between pages she never read anymore, and she had thought that was safe. She had not thought enough about Sam's particular nature, the way his attention, when it finally turned somewhere, was absolute. She was in the bath when she heard him. She heard the quiet, which was worse than noise. That specific silence from the bedroom that meant he had found something and was very carefully deciding what to do with it. She came out in her robe, her hair wrapped, to find him sitting on the edge of the bed with the card held between 2 fingers like evidence. "Explain this," he said. "It's a business card," she said. Her voice was steady. She was getting better at steady. "I know what it is." His jaw was very controlled. "Why do you have it?" "He gave it to me at the gala. And you kept it." "Yes." He stood up. He was not a man who yelled. That was the thing that people never understood when she tried, in the small hours of bad nights, to explain her marriage to herself. The absence of yelling did not mean the absence of menace. It meant the menace was more refined. "Did you contact him?" he asked. She looked at him. She held his gaze the way she had held it at the gala, without softening, without the automatic retreat she had spent years performing. "Yes," she said. The word landed in the room like a stone in still water. Sam's face did not change. That was almost the most frightening thing about him, the control of it. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he set the card down on the nightstand. "You need to understand something," he said, his voice very quiet. "About who I am in this city, about what my position means, about what it would cost you to make me an enemy." She heard the threat in it. She knew exactly what he meant. Her whole life for the last 4 years had been constructed inside the boundary of his approval. Their shared accounts, their shared apartment, their shared social circle, all of it orbited him. She had no independent orbit. She had made herself a moon, and moons did not get to choose when they shone. "I know who you are," she said. "Then you know," he said, "that this needs to stop. And if it doesn't?" she asked. He tilted his head slightly. "That's not a question you should be asking." "I'm asking it," she said. His eyes went very still. She had the feeling of standing at the edge of a significant altitude, looking down. The old terror was there, the habitual pull toward safety, toward compliance, toward smoothing this over before it became something irreversible. She did not step back. "I'm going to make us coffee," she said, and walked out of the bedroom. She stood at the kitchen counter and gripped the edge of it with both hands and breathed. Her heart was hammering. Her knees were not entirely steady, but her hands on the counter were not shaking, and that felt important. She picked up her phone. She opened a new message. She typed a number from memory, because she had read the card so many times she had internalized it the way she had once internalized poetry she loved. She typed, "I think I'm done being invisible." She hit send before she could take it back. 3 seconds later, "Then let's make sure of it." She did not fully understand what he meant until 9 days later, when Sam came home from the base at 4 in the afternoon, which he never did, and he sat across from her at the kitchen table, and he told her that the logistics contract the base had been negotiating had been dissolved by the civilian partner without explanation. She looked at him. "The civilian partner," she said carefully. "Some Korean investment group." He said it with a particular dismissal, the way he said things that bothered him more than he wanted to show. "They pulled out this morning. Hargrove is furious. It would have been a significant contract." She kept her face very still. "That's unfortunate," she said. Sam looked at her with a sudden, sharp attention. "Do you know something about this?" "Why would I?" she said. He searched her face. She let him search it. She had learned a great deal recently about how to hold a face still. He found nothing. But she knew. She understood, with a clarity that was almost dizzying, exactly what Jae-ho had done. He had not come to the gala for logistics. He had come because someone had told him something or he had found something out, and he had chosen to show up in that room on that night, and she had been wearing a red dress, and he had decided she was worth paying attention to. And now he was dismantling Sam's professional landscape one quiet decision at a time, without a single raised voice, without a single visible move, the way a very patient and very powerful man does when he has decided that something is unjust and he has the resources to correct it. She thought about what that meant. She thought about the weight of being someone that a man like that chose to stand beside. She thought about the word home and what it meant and whether she had ever actually had one, and whether it was possible that home was not a place at all but a feeling, a specific feeling of being known and seen and not required to be small. Her phone buzzed on the table. Sam glanced at it. A calendar notification. Innocuous. She had said it herself. But she knew what it really meant. He had sent her an address that morning. A restaurant, upscale, private, the kind of place that existed in the city without advertising itself. 6 o'clock. She had 4 hours. She stood up from the kitchen table, and she went to the bedroom, and she stood in front of her closet for a long, considered moment. She chose the red dress. Besties, Eliana is walking out of that door, and she is not the same woman who walked into that gala. And Kang Jae-ho is waiting. Subscribe right now, because what happens at that restaurant and who Sam sends after her is going to make everything that came before look like a warm-up. This story is just starting to breathe.